Okay, here's a little demo of Direct Code version 3.0. I'm just going to jump right into it here. We'll insert a text object. And the big change now is that the vid object editor now includes every single facet that you could change in the vid object. So here we have a lot of the basics here. The appearance, alignment, wrap, font. We have all the font settings, graphics. We have an image if you want to attach to it, a draw block or a layout block. All the data that would attach to the object, actions, so you can create any of the actions that are supported by Red for any object. And also you can add a React block. So in this case, we're going to just turn this into a label. So this is a demonstration. I like to set the font size before I do anything, and then let's set the background so we can see a little bit about how this is working. We're going to change the size of this. Now these arrows will move the size 1 pixel, but the scroll wheel will also allow it to change, and it jumps it by 3 or 4 pixels per time. So I'll make the first name about that big, and we want to make the alignment to the right so that it's a proper label like that, and that should be good for that. Now we want to insert a field, and we want the field to be the same size font just to be consistent, and we want to name this field first name, and we can put somebody's name in there, Joe. So if we were going to ask for the last name, we could just duplicate these objects now. So we have that option here, and we can return that and make that our last name. And we'll do the same with this field. We will duplicate him, and he's going to be called last name, and we'll change it to Blow. And then what we'll do is, now we need a submit button, obviously, so we'll add that. And again, we'll position it, insert return before the object. It drops it down automatically for you. Submit, and we want the font similar size there, and yeah, it's the way it is fine. We want it a little bit bigger. Again, we're going to change the size here, but in this time we're going to click and drag, and it lets you drag out the size of the object however big you want it, which is another option here. So you can just do single click on the buttons, click and drag to drag out the size, or you can use the scroll wheel. So we've got that so far. Now we've need to put some instructions in here, so we'll put in an area. That area will be please fill out your form after you have paid Pat Smith. Now this data that went into the live object isn't reflected in the object editor yet, but if we click on the import button here, it will pull that data in and interpret the code all in one swoop, and then it resizes the object as well, because that's what the layout engine does anyway. But I don't want this quite so big, and I don't want that there either, so I'm going to move that right to the start. And that's not quite what I wanted it to do, so I need to add a return before this object. And then I'm going to resize this guy. But first, we want this to wrap. Yeah, that would be better. And we want the size to be a little more concise. We'll put that in there like that. That should be close enough. And then at this point, we can start to move into creating our code. Actually, I'm going to show you another way to open the vid object editor. If I hold the left control key down and click on an object with my middle mouse button, then my vid object editor opens up on the far left hand side of the screen. The reason for that is that if I want to add an action to this submit button, I can do that here, and it opens up this tiny little editor. I can put my code in there. I can submit the code and test it, and I can see my results over here in the red console. So that's really useful. Now the other piece about monitoring or managing the source code is that sometimes you get confused about which object you're working on. So let's say we've got these two objects opened up, and we're not sure who is who when they're open here. We can go into object and highlight source code, and it'll highlight the source code for us here. So this one will do the same. Highlights it there. Or you can click on the object name label, which will highlight it as well. The one other advanced feature is if you click on the file button, then the editor that you've configured will pop open, and you can look at the different objects with your editor by clicking on the object name again here. It'll highlight here, but it also brings you to the code in the actual text editor. So if we wanted to change this button, let's say now, we just save it. It automatically updates it in the code, so you can actually make your changes here and see the results happen in real time as well. This is really important because you can then move to the next phase of your development where you're using your own editor with all of its advanced tools and using Direct Code to show the results for you. And the other thing you can find to locate your code is to highlight the GUI object. So it'll flash the object so you can locate it on the page. One other thing you can do as well is if you go down here and you double click on any of this, you can open the editor on the code that you've highlighted. So that was that object, brings it over to here, and it allows us to not lose our way between the video or the vid object editor, the source code, and the actual GUI layout that we've created. Details about all of this, of course, can be found under your help, Direct Code help file, and it'll describe a lot of these things and more, different key code combinations that you can use to activate the vid object editor if your middle mouse button doesn't work, and that should get you going.